So what's up?
Well, first of all, thanks for the time.
You're welcome.
And sort of like I talked with you earlier, this is a group of other faith leaders that we have kind of a working team.
Okay.
It's a part of Unite, which is a sort of collaborative effort of churches across the entire city, metro Atlanta area. Our group really represents Central City.
All right.
Which is sort of right now is inside 285.
Right.
So for us, the issues of the city and working and having a good relationship with government is really what we found critical, to get things done that really affect social issues. So Chip is at Perimeter.
Okay.
Up in, I guess it's Gwinnett County, right? Duluth area. But Perimeter really gave birth to the whole concept of Unite. And so how many churches, Chip, are?
Probably close to 150 overall metro-wide. And then the Central City is just kind of forming a core.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Dr. Durley and Dr. Milner's church are both part of that.
Mm-hmm.
So our kind of goal was to be able to come to you and spend some time asking some questions and getting your insight that we could take back to our larger groups.
I'm looking for answers too, so
yeah. Well, and also to get your recommendations on the next, what are the issues that are still there that we really need to be looking at on how we can partner in solution. So the first question I was going to want to ask you was when you think of how the faith community has worked with your administration, what are some of the highlights that come to mind of things over the last
Well,
year?
First of all, thanks for coming. I mean, one of the I came at this from an experience I had with Andrew Young, who you know is an ordained minister. And when he was mayor, he would periodically meet with faith leaders in his office privately, and they would just chat. They wouldn't really let the rest of us come into the meeting. So I don't have any idea what they talked about. But because he had such a rigorous travel schedule and he continued this activity, it became clear to me through a variety of things that happened in the 1980s through his administration. And because he's a hero of mine, it became clear to me when I ran and won that trying to find a format to have this level of exchange with faith leaders on an ongoing basis was an important one. And you well know that we do the Faith Roundtable really as kind of a foundation of that. Certainly not intended to be anything other than on this date, at this time, I will be at this place to engage with folks. So having regular interchange and engagement across the faith community and across the region, I think is fundamental. And I consider that a success because people have stayed engaged and involved, even if I'm only talking about water, which I did much of. The second thing, that very group in the early stages said to us, we've observed some things and we think you need to address them. Well, I wasn't thinking about those things. I came in, it was a budget crisis, and we were coming out of a recession. Does that sound familiar? I'm the first mayor in a long time that's been mayor for 2 recessions, not one. This one being the worst, of course. No, it's true. 2002, we were still coming out of a recession, and now they're saying we're coming out, but I don't know which part of the world they're talking about.
Yeah, really.
But the point is, the faith leaders said these are some things that we see that structurally need to be addressed and institutionally, meaning from the city, and it was homelessness and affordable housing. Those were the first 2 issues that came to me from faith leaders and a cross-section of folks. And so we went about the business in the first 2 years of trying to begin to structure our administration's policies, in addition to water and sewer, in addition to budget, in addition to police and all of those things. I would have never come to those. I mean, so the faith community was essential in bringing some clarity to where the gaps were. I mean, on homelessness, for instance, there was a strong feeling, you will not believe this, with Debbie Starnes, that the city of Atlanta shouldn't do anymore, that was a county function. Because in fact, human services are county functions, not city functions, and that we shouldn't put our money in. And she tells the story that I said to her, she was the chair of the finance committee, or a very strong supporter on the council. I said, okay, you could take that same approach to the airport, and we wouldn't have an airport today. The city of Atlanta built the airport, started building it 80 years ago, and today the economy is very much driven by aviation and air travel. So, but I had to convince city leaders. The reason I was able to do that was it wasn't my idea. It was faith leaders. It was people through the community who believed in them. So that's one. And the second one was affordable housing. Everybody thought we were absolutely crazy to propose that the city underwrite through its own financing soft second mortgages for people. Now, you know, the homelessness you're talking about, the very low end. Now we're talking about people who work, who can't afford decent housing because of rising housing costs, et cetera, all the things you know. We would have never been able to issue $35 million in bonds backed by property tax had it not been the faith community. So those are two concrete examples from my administration that say the faith community gave the moral leadership and the political backing that allowed us to do things very, very differently. Now, if you look at homelessness, the city clearly is in the conversation, but so the faith community is still in the conversation in leadership. But all of a sudden, the counties are in it. 10 years ago, that was not the case. You know, I mean, that was not the case. I mean, Fulton County's initial reaction, not some of the leaders, but their initial reaction to Gateway was that they would put a bus stop out front. Now, in fact, they're fully engaged. They are funding case managers. They're you know, I'm not suggesting we're doing enough, but it's a much fuller approach than it was before. So if you put a pin in that, I think those who, like yourselves, who are on the ground need to not defer to the next mayor or the next elected leadership in the region, but you ought to be, in your minds, thinking about, in your discussions, what issues do you believe? There are still much to be done on the ones we've started, but what issues are we missing? And which issues are you seeing that are not really being, I mean, my favorites would be mental health care. The state's mental health care system, re-entry from prison. You know, I mean, these are all driving quality of life issues in our community. I mean, those would be two I would put on the table. It is not, it's not easy for an elected official to talk about prison reentry, you know, felony reentry, or convicted felon reentry, or mental health care. When we're all acting as if everyone is born with all the mental faculties and support that they need, and that if you don't have them, there's something wrong with you, as opposed to something wrong with the system, you know? And so, I mean, I would, you know, for me, I would talk about that. Obviously, we're concerned about human trafficking, which is another one. But that's kind of getting some traction, and people are talking about that. So the reason, I mean, I'm not saying...
Thanks to your leadership, by the way,
well,
for that.
thank you, but I mean also the faith community's leadership, willing to say, okay, is this really going on? But the point is, so you don't, I don't see this as a situation where you take one issue at a time. I think you take those where we've made some progress, you continue the pressure on those and the advocacy on those, and you continue to add. And my reason for that is Atlanta is, and Metro Atlanta is no longer just a sleepy little place. It is a big metropolis. And we don't necessarily have the institutional network and policies that we need to respond to that. So it's shocking to people like Bonnie and Jack Harden and Vince Smith and others that we have as many women and children coming into the Gateway today as we had 6 months ago. Well, in a small town, you